Hey everybody, so today I'm going to show you how I create my exit ticket so that I get a sheet that looks like this with all of my responses in it. So this is an exit ticket that I made for math. So you'll see here that I have all my student names here off on the side. I have it changing color based on whether or not they earned the point or not on that day's question. And across the top here, you can see the different questions that I asked each day. So now we're going to move over to the form and I'm going to show you how I create my form so that it ends up looking like this. So here on my form, at the top it says exit ticket, then it says name. And when I created this question, I did it as a drop down. And the reason you want to do it as a drop down is because you want the student's name to show up in exactly the same way every single time. And if you leave it as an open-ended question for students to type in their name, they might write first and last name, they might capitalize or not, they might even misspell it sometimes. So you want to make sure that you cut and paste their names in ahead of time. You can do this straight from any roster. If you copy your list and paste it in, it will just autofill down in the options here. Then you want to add a question. So you'll start with one question that you want to ask that day. And then before you do anything else, you're going to go into your responses tab and you're going to link it to a spreadsheet. So I created a new spreadsheet. And we're going to look at that spreadsheet here. And this is where we're going to look at the actual form responses themselves. So here you can see the form responses. You can see it's time stamping, it's collecting the email, their score, name, answers to the questions. Now, this is kind of cumbersome to look at. So what I have done is actually put in a query formula that I'm going to show you how to do here in just a moment on a separate tab. So what I did was I added another tab to my form, and you can see here that I've got another tab. And I copy and pasted in what we call a query formula. So we see I've got a query and I've got this apostrophe form responses 1. So I'm saying pull all the information from this form responses 1 tab. And then I'm saying to take it from cell C all the way to BB. So I've got it running as far as that other sheet currently goes. If my questions ended up running farther than column BB on this other tab, I could always change this number. So basically what it's doing is it's just pulling the information from those tabs onto this tab. Now, why would I want to do that? Here's why. You can see here that I've frozen a couple of columns so that as I scan across, this moves. I've also frozen this row across the top so that as I scroll down, I can still see what question students were answering. I've added some conditional formatting to ask it to turn green when they got the question correct, red when they got the question wrong. I cannot do any of that formatting on a form responses tab. If I tried to format any of this, anytime a new response came in, it would not be formatted. So I do this query so that I've got one sheet that's easy to look at. Now our next question is, how do I get it so that I'm getting these different questions across the top? Obviously you saw my form that I just showed you. It only had one question on it. It did not have more than one. So let's head back to that form and I'll show you how I did that. So here we are back at the form. I've got my name and I've got my question. Now let's say this was yesterday's exit ticket question. Today I want a new one. So I'm going to add a question. And let's say today I want to do a multiplication question. So I'm going to ask them to solve 3 times a equals 15. What does a equal? Let's change. So it's if times a equals 15, what does a equal? Okay, I like to do short answer so that I actually get a good idea what they do and do not know. I'm going to click on my answer key. I'm going to make it worth 1 point and say 5. I also understand some students write my a equals 5. Some students might spell out 5. Some students might do a space equals 5. So I'm going to try to get in as many of the variations as I think they might put in here. I'm obviously not going to get all of them, and that's why you'll always have the option to go in later and manually change or fix these if the form makes a mistake and marks one wrong. I'm going to mark all of their answers incorrect for now. I could leave this unchecked if I didn't want it to do this and I wanted to do all of them manually. And then, because I'm done with this question, this was yesterday's question, I'm going to get rid of it. So I'm actually going to click on this question and just delete it. So now I still have my exit ticket with the one question. And then when I send it, here is what they will see. They will see the form, they'll choose their name, and they'll just have this question here. They'll type in their answer, they can view their score, and it'll show them whether they're correct or incorrect. And now let's head back to see what happened to our sheet. So as you saw, this question here, when we went back here, auto-populated. If 3 times a equals 15, what does a equal? And then when we scroll down, we can see Maria's answer here, 5, and we can see that it marked it correct. So the last thing that I'll show you to do here is how I froze these cells into this conditional formatting. Now the important thing to remember is I did not do this on my form responses tab. I did this on that extra tab I created where I input this formula. Now I'm going to paste this formula into the description of the video if you would like to use it and try this yourself. So all I did when I created this extra tab was paste this formula, and I'm not typing anything in on this tab. It's pulling all the information from the other tab, but it's allowing me to format it now. So the first thing I did was click on this row and go to View, Freeze One Row. Then I selected these columns, I did View, Freeze, and I froze these columns. That's so that as I scroll back and forth, I can always still see the names, and as I scroll down, I can still see these questions. The second thing I did was some conditional formatting. So I right-clicked, went to conditional formatting, and this says if the text contains a 0, so I'm applying it to this whole column. If the text contains a 0, it will turn red. If the text does not contain a 0, so if they did actually get a point, it's going to turn green. Now, the last step on this that is a reason I love using my exit tickets this way is that when it comes time for report cards and I'm filling out where students are at on a standard, if I want to come back to this and check anything for a specific student, I can click on the name column. I can click on this filter button. So I've got these little lines here. And you can see filter by values. You can see right now all these names are checked right now. If I clear this and say, I just want to see Maria's. Now you see here, I have all of her responses. Okay, you can see she didn't even answer this question. And she did answer these ones. So if on a day she didn't submit, so it looks like today it's showing that she submitted and for some reason gave her the point, but I don't have a data point there. That's interesting. But that's something that I could look into. Oh, nope, that's here. So she submitted her answer. It was correct. Here, she submitted her answer. She was correct. This would be a reason I'd want to make sure I mark all their answers wrong, because obviously she turned in a blank one. It's still saying it's correct because I didn't select to mark it wrong and I didn't go in and manually grade it yet. But then this way I can really see all of the students' exit tickets. I can always go back to my form responses if I want and check the timestamps on those as well. But I really, really like having that extra tab that is just visually easier to look at for me. So remember, when you're creating in your exit ticket, when you want those separate questions across the top, do not just edit this question, add a new one to the form, and then delete the previous one. And then when you go here, it will be adding questions as you go across. And you can keep all of your exit tickets and all of your data for your students within one Google Sheet. Okay, just a reminder, if you liked the idea of formatting your sheet the way that I formatted it, I put that formula down in the description box. I hope you enjoyed and that this was helpful.